everyone. I welcome you all to this live webinar today, which would be focusing on how is digital education going to be accessible, affordable, and constant to the underprivileged students and children. My name is Sudhir Gautam. I'm the Senior Assistant Editor and Bureau Head with Illets Technomedia Private Limited. Illets Technomedia is a 17 years old B2B media research-based media organization which closely works with the government at the district, city level, state, national, and international level. Illets Technomedia brings out 4 sector-focused publication, which includes eGov magazine, which that highlights innovations in technology, smart cities, and various other sectors. Digital learning that focuses on education, e-health that focuses on healthcare system, and BFSI Post, which focuses on banking and finance. And it was founded by Dr. Ravi Gupta. He is the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief. We at Illets Technomedia, in the backdrop of Corona crisis, which has thrown several challenges upon the humankind, we have embarked upon a rigorous campaign in the form of online live interaction, webinars, and various other online channel of ours. Bringing on board several experts from the government, who are the policymakers, who are on the front line combating this corona pandemic, and also those experts in various fields in the education, health, and various other sectors. So today, I'm glad to introduce a very special guest who is a 1995 batch IPS officer, but he is an educationist by passion. He's a social reformer, he is a revolutionary educationist, and he is also a person who could bring change in this in this world of discrimination. And he is currently the Secretary of Telangana Social Welfare Residential Educational Institution Society, and also Telangana Tribal Welfare Residential Educational Institution Society in the state of Telangana. He has in his career of IPS spanning around 25 years, he worked at the state level, national level, and international level. And to his credit, there are several recognition and medals to him. He's also the first to receive the Telangana State Award in 2017. And we would listen many more things from him. And he's also the transforming force and the brain behind the pride of our country, Purna Malavat, the youngest girl who scaled the Mount Everest, and also Anand, and many mites who follow sports. Nandini, who could secure gold medal in the field, in the sports field. We would hear a lot about the sports and the success stories coming from this tribal and social welfare institutions from Telangana. And he's also the founder for a payback campaign called SWAERO, SWAERO. We would also talk about that from our key speaker, who is Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar, Secretary, Telangana State Social Welfare and Tribal Welfare Residential Educational Institution. Welcome, sir, to this live webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir.
Thanks. Sir, first, in the interest of our audience who do not know much about you, can you please tell us about your background, your studies, your career, and all of the change from active policing to an educationist. Please tell us.
Thank you, Sudhir. Thanks for asking this question. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Praveen Kumar. I belong to 1995 batch Indian Police Service. But after 17 years of active policing, I volunteered to serve the poorest of the poor through quality education, through government educational departments in the channels. So this is my 8th year of service in education sector, and so happy and then so contented and then so excited to work in this sector. I have learned a lot, and more than what I had learned in policing the last 17 years, and then it was every day has been a great challenge and a moment of satisfaction. This organization, it was started the social welfare residential schools as an organization, as an experiment. This was started in the year 1984 when Mr. N.T. Ramarao was Chief Minister and S.R. Shankaran was the Secretary of Social Welfare, Principal Secretary of Social Welfare, only to cater to the poorest of the poor students. So when Telangana was separated from the combined state of United State of Andhra Pradesh, we had only 134 institutions, but today we have 268 institutions, and we have in tribal welfare we have 179 institutions, and then our entire residential institutions put together in Telangana we have today from 295 on 2014. Today we are more than 1,000 institutions in Telangana in residential education mode. So this is briefly about our institutions. In social welfare we have about 1,50,000 students, and then in tribal welfare we have about 60,000 students, more than 2,10,000 students we have with us. And then if all societies put together, we have about 5 to 6 lakh students. By 2022 or 23, we'll have at least 8.5 lakh students in residential education mode in the entire state of Telangana. It's a massive project under KG to PG mission, and the government of Telangana, thanks to our Honorable Chief Minister and his vision. So we have, we'll have about 10 lakh students studying in residential mode in English medium. All our schools are English medium schools, and then the students do not have to pay anything to study in our institutions. So this is one of the best ever experiments to have happened in public education sector in this country. Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have seen that you have moved from the active policing, and now from the institution which you are heading, we can see many success stories, and especially many couldn't imagine that like Purna, Nandini, Anand, there are many success stories coming up. There is some driving force that is leading. There is a system in your institution. Can you tell how you switched from active policing to being an educationist?
Good question. This question has been asked from day one, ever since I joined in the welfare education sector. See, at the very outset, I was a student of social welfare hostels, and then I had a lot of problems in those hostels, and then with great difficulty, thanks to some of our most committed teachers for whom I have been, I'll be ever grateful throughout my life, and some of the seniors who have worked as mentors. And then I fortunately got into a very serious academic orbit, and then I joined university, and then from there I went on to join post graduation and graduated with gold medal. And then thanks to some of our seniors, then I was mentored to encouraged to write a civil services examination. And then after a couple of attempts, I got successful enough to, in the second attempt, I got Indian Railway Traffic Service and then Indian Police Service in the third attempt. Then I fortunately got, Andhra Pradesh cadre in those days, now allotted to Telangana cadre. So, but after 17 years of active policing, so what I thought was, there could be lakhs of students who have the same background like mine. missing out the opportunities, missing out the mentorship, missing out the ecosystem that I was fortunate enough to have. So I thought for a while, probably if I switch over the departments, even for a while, so probably I would be, strengthening this ecosystem. I'd be reaching out to those unreached millions of students in this country by devising an operating system, and then by reforming the department with the help of government, with the help of political support. So that's what I thought. And then, of course, the second reason why I thought I should come to this department was a strong sense of payback. Okay, I have become an IPS officer. I'm getting a salary, you know, in the 5 digit salary, and then I have a government quarter, and then I have a car provided by the government, and then my children are going to good schools. But there are millions of people who are not very fortunate to have this kind of trajectory. So can I do something for those children while being in the government? So this is what this is one of the reasons, a strong sense of payback. I found my calling. So then I chose to volunteer to work in this department. Is something. The third, of course, is I wanted to learn a lot from people like you, then many teachers, and many experts in education sector, and then many alternative thinkers. All these people, so they bring a lot of freshness into my thinking, and then they brought a lot of vitality. They infused a new life into our organization. So this is one learning from diverse thinkers and the diverse community of people, so who are much better, who are doing much greater things with minimum resources at their disposal. So I wanted to learn from them also. These are some of the three things. And of course, my mother's story is again has been a great source of inspiration. She was a bonded laborer. Then she was rescued, and then she was sent to a government school. Then she finished her 10th grade, and after that she joined teacher training in 1950s, and then she retired as headmistress. And then today she is a mother of an IPS officer, an associate professor, and the doctor. So this story again and again comes to my mind. So if one bonded laborer, one child laborer, she could become a mother of an IPS officer and a doctor and then an associate professor. So I think every child in this country has a right, inalienable right, a constitutional right to follow the same trajectory of my mom. So what can a government do for such kids? As an officer, as a beneficiary, as a citizen, what can we do as individuals, as a collection of different individuals? What can we do to save those people and then put them into a different prosperous and then aspirational orbit? Is something which brought me into this educational sector. And then I think every day is a very, very exciting, every day is an opportunity for me to transform the lives of the students through the government sector, and then the not-for-profit sectors as well. And then we are working with them, some for-profit sectors as well. So I will learn every day. I will learn a new thing from these people.
Okay, great, sir. Great to know about the inspiration. Over the years, I've known you, and I've also been working with you, and I'm visiting your institution. Wherever I go, I can see those 10 commandments in your institution. Can you tell us about how did you come up with, it was you who came up with those commandments, and what was the drive behind it?
Great question again. Sudhir, one of the important things, poor people, what I have observed from my ecosystem in which I was brought up, and then the ecosystem which I have been exposed to as a student, and then ecosystem which the people whom I have been exposed to, have been dealing with as an officer in the Indian Police Service. So one of the things that I have learned in my journey was poor people, anyway, they're inherently poor, but one important thing, they have been made to believe that they're destined to become poor. This is a conspiracy of highest order. So nobody is inherently poor. These people have been made to think that, okay, you are poor, and then you are destined to be poor. And then, okay, if you are feeling hungry, okay, take 2 meals a day. If you are shelterless, okay, now go to that home and then take shelter. But not beyond that point. Not beyond that point. There is an unseen glass ceiling. So that needs to be broken. There is a stereotyping which is very reckless. which is very conspiratorial sometimes. So those stereotypes and then those sense of inferiority has to be busted at every level. So if children are made to, and that can be done at a very young age. So innocently, these children, they pick up all that has been thrown upon them when they see their parents prostrating, when they see their parents subjugating, when they see their parents being maimed and victimized for no fault of theirs. I think these children, they internalize all that suppression, that oppression, that discrimination. So I'm the last person to accept that. So what we thought as a group of officers and enlightened individuals, and then the people who have escaped from the trap of that kind of poverty, what we thought, no, enough is enough. So we must give a new ideology wherein these people, they can safely discover their potential, and then they discover their hidden potential, and then they can liberate themselves, and by taking all the opportunities and by searching for the opportunities in their lives, and surge ahead in their lives with anybody, without support, or if there is any support, take that support and then go ahead and then come back to the communities and then lift again thousands and the thousands of people. So that is a thinking, that kind of thinking which made us to devise these 10 commandments. And then our first commandment starts with, I am not inferior to anyone. And then second commandment is, I shall be the leader wherever I am. Third is, I shall do what I love and be different. Fourth is, I shall always think big and aim high. Fifth is, I shall be honest, hardworking, and punctual. The sixth is, I shall never blame others for my failures. And seventh is, I shall neither beg nor cheat. Eighth is, I shall repay what I borrow. And ninth is, I shall never fear the unknown. And 10th is, I shall never give up. I think there is no commandment which is controversial at all. And then our degree college girls have added 11th commandment, that is, I shall never marry, I shall not marry till I become independent.
Oh.
So our 10 commandments are evolving and getting refined day in and day out. So this is not my idea, Sudhir, not my idea alone. So, but I was privy to a lot of brainstorming sessions, conversations. How do we change the course of thinking of these children in the juggies and jopdis and the ghettos, all the poorest of the poor habitations in this country? So we came up with these 10 commandments. Let's change. As James Allen said, you will be what you will to be. I repeat, James Allen, the author of As a Man Thinketh, said, you will be what you will to be. So first you need to change your attitude, and then you need to change your identity. So when I say identity, not just name changing, but your entire regimen of thinking, acting, and so on and so forth. Yeah, this is how we came up with the 10 commandments.
And that's wonderful, sir, inspiring. And one interesting thing which I've seen, and most of your students are full of enthusiasm and very proudly they put a suffix in their name, which has also come up in the government identity cards, like voter ID cards, and also they use the word Swayaro.
Yes.
Can you please tell us about that?
Yes, it's again, I expected this question that yes. Again, your sometimes, oftentimes, your sense of identity will decide your destiny. So, poor people, they're like, you see YouTube, and then you see a guy, a boy, for example, who is, it's a very popular YouTube video. So, a child acting as a guide in Khajuraho temples. And then this guy speaks very good Spanish, and then this guy speaks very good Italian, and speaks very good English. And then very young boy, probably he must have picked up because of his exposure to a lot of international tourists. And then he must have picked it up by sheer instinct, and then maybe by sheer necessity. So, and then this boy, just because he's looking darker in his skin complexion, so this boy is nicknamed as Kalu. So what a crime it is. So we said, no, you cannot decide the destiny or identity of an individual just based on his skin complexion, just because based on the locality in which he lives, or based on his caste or whatever, so religion, whatever. So we said, the identity must be aspirational. Identity must pull out a lot of good thoughts in you. The identity must pull out a lot of self-esteem and then pride. Your identity must be synonymous with the greater things that you do, greater things that you are going to do. So we thought we discourage the word Dalit, we discourage the word called Pichde, we discourage the word called Kamjor. All these identities which pull out a lot of sadness, a lot of negative. I'm not saying negative images. I'm not saying that there is no discrimination in this country. I'm not saying there is no oppression in this country. Every day you come across a lot of news of maiming, then discrimination, oppression, then killing. All that happens in this country. You have rapes and all that must be happening somewhere or other in this country. But we thought for a while, so but as a child is very unique, a child is very pure. So if the child again is if we impose the same identity, shows the images on the child, probably he will go nowhere, and then he or she they will go to the places where society innocently, wittingly or unwittingly wanted them to go. So we thought, no, enough is enough. Let us not use the word called Dalit. Let us use a neutral word, an aspirational word, SWERO. SW stands for state welfare, and then aero is synonymous with air and sky. So your thinking, your goals, your aspirations must be touching air and sky always. That's how our Everest conquerors, the pioneers in this SWERO identity, could go to the top of Mount Everest, despite the fact that 18 people died in that expedition. So they went without any fear there. And then all because of the 10 commandments, all because of the identity, and all because of the sense of identity that they had no. They thought every time, every moment, they thought that they are not inferior to anyone, and then they shall never fear the unknown. And then because they are all Sweros, and they're chosen people, they are chosen to perform a task of liberating poor people from poverty. So that is how the identity of Swero. Today we have people naming themselves as Oxygen Swero. Can you imagine somebody naming his son as Oxygen? Somebody is, yeah, exactly. What an aspiration. Somebody is naming his son as Anthony von Leeuwenhoek, and somebody is Joseph Presley, somebody is Louis Pasteur. So these are the aspirational Aryabhatta, then whatnot, Abdul Kalam. So these are the aspirational identities which we are bringing into the conversation. So with this, entire conversation got changed. So our children used to get scared whenever somebody asks which part of village you live. What does your parents do? Then what is the story behind your name? All that is gone with Swero. But one stroke, so all that sense of inferiority is gone. And today our people are going to all the places which normally go. Yeah.
It's a complete transformation.
Absolutely. Complete transformation. And this is just a beginning, Sudhir.
Great, sir. I'm looking forward to constantly check and observe these success stories. Now, sir, your institution, social welfare and tribal welfare institutions, can you tell us the total strength, strength of students now? And if I'm not wrong, there are many poorest of poor and orphans in your institutions. Can you tell us about the strength of your teachers, your students?
We have in both the societies, we call them as societies because the government by act, by design, by act, and to make it more, efficient. So government has created two societies, social welfare and tribal welfare, two societies, two different entities. And we have about 2.1 lakh students. And then we have 60% of the students, we have 60% of the girls, like almost 1.2 to 1.3 lakh students are girls, and then remaining of them are boys. And then we are more girl centric for a reason, because girls are more marginalized among the marginalized. Then we have about 15,000 teachers. So, and all our schools are English medium schools. And then all our schools are residential schools. Our students stay at the place where they study. So, and then our teachers are expected to be residential wherever there is accommodation provided. Otherwise, also they stay in closer vicinity. And we operate on a play to slate approach, and then wherein the students do not have to pay anything, and government spends about 55,000 rupees per student per year. This is what is the expenditure per student. And yeah, and construction is a separate head, so I don't want to talk about construction. So every school is built at the cost of 20 crores each. So this is the plan generally. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, sir. So now you're quite aware, and the current corona pandemic has thrown several challenges upon the humankind, and education sector is not away from it. And at this time, most of the private institutions have switched themselves to online teaching, which also needs a lot of I mean infrastructure, or maybe tab, computer, internet, all this. And uh, as for the underprivileged, they might not have access to this. How do you see the current crisis, corona crisis?
This is never like probably once in lifetime or once in a once in a century crisis, I would say. So now, as on today, almost 1.6 billion students are out of schools. 1.6 billion students out of schools, and then children are the worst sufferers of not only pandemic but any crisis for that matter, because when schools get closed, because in pandemics you don't want the transmission to have community level transmission to happen, and then you don't want children to suffer, and then you don't want the old age people to suffer because of the children being sometimes innocent and asymptomatic carriers, and then the teachers, and then every day in and day out they come from different localities to at one place, and then they go back to their homes, and then so this had to happen. So, but thanks to the innovation, thanks to the teachers, thanks to the commitment of different schooling systems in different countries, including India. So every effort is being made to salvage the academic years, and then prepare this generation for the next academic year. So I'm happy that you have asked this question. So what are we doing during these COVID times? But before I answer this question, I also would like to tell you, we were not expecting these kind of pandemics. If I say that, then I would be really exaggerating my premonition. But what I would say is, ever since we started this experimentation in our welfare residential schools, one thing which we made it very clear to our teachers was reduce the students' dependence on you. That is the best way best justice, best thing a teacher can do to a student. I'm not talking about the formative years like first to fifth grade, because where you need a teacher, because children are children, so they'll have to depend on some adult. But as they graduate into middle schools like seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, so slowly a teacher has to change his or her role as a facilitator, rather than being I know everything and you know nothing kind of thing. So rather than being a sage on the stage, and then we become a guide on the side, and then be a facilitator, empower the students so that they can steer the entire education on their own. So what we did in our ecosystem was, we started in I'm talking about 2013, how we prepared the ground and how that is helping us in COVID time. So I think if you permit, I'll spend about a couple of minutes on that. So what we did was, in every class, we introduced a teaching assistant system. And then, mind you, we are a government system. Teaching assistant system. And then every class, we have quartet system. Quartet, every class of 40, we have groups of 4 students, one brighter student, one not so brighter student, and 2 students facing the learning difficulty there. And then that quartet is expected to thrive on its own. And what teacher does in this case is, he or she prepares a self-organized learning environment. So there are low-hanging fruits, there are high-hanging fruits. The entire syllabus is given to the students well in advance and pasted on the walls of the school, and then the children are expected to go through all these points and then refer to the content and then discuss among themselves, come back to the discuss among themselves, and then come back to the classroom with little bit of preparation, so that there can be more conversation in the classroom rather than teaching continuously using blackboard, and then teacher teaches for 40 minutes and then after that there's nothing left for the children to interact and all. No, we said no. If we have to change the public education in this country, we must equally empower the students. While we empower the teachers, there are hundreds of capacity building programs, but there are a few very less capacity building programs for the students. So we have a 5-point program. We devised a 5-point program. We call it as a P5 program. In P5, first is we empower the teachers. That is an ongoing process. We call it as a professional, capacity building or professional development. There are 100 different names for this program. B, we empower the students. C, we use the technology. D, we use competitiveness. We have hundreds of competitions happening in the school level, and then district level, and then regional level, and then zonal level. And then E is the last point is community. We involve the community. We treat the community as a very important stakeholders. So this is the 5-point scheme which we have started, and then that is paying dividends now. Today, in post-COVID time, our teachers are able to connect to the parents. They are able to tell the parents, although they are first generation students, they are able to connect to the parents and the communities. Look, this is the syllabus which we wanted to teach. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we are not able to teach. And this is a syllabus your children are going to learn in the next academic year. Why don't you prepare them now itself? And this is a textbook. And these are the textbooks which we have already sent through your students to your homes. Please read these things, these lessons to your students. So what we did in the last 5 to 6 years was we created an operating system. I would call Sphera operating system. So all the academic calendars have been printed. Almost 2 lakh copies we have printed, and then we have circulated to each and every household in Telugu language. What parents have to do, when child, what time child has to get up, what exercises child have to do, and then what are the subjects child has to, what are the activities, various activities child has to do during forenoon and during afternoon, what are the games child has to play, all that, what is the food child has to give, and what are the tablets child has to take if he or she is sick, and if there is an emergency, what are the numbers child has to, what are the numbers a parent has to call, all this, and if there is any doubt, what are the numbers of the teachers child has to call. So all these things have been diligently, patiently injected into the community and the students. So now today, suddenly schools got closed. Now there is fear everywhere and you cannot go out. And then the law enforcement agencies, they will not allow you because there is social distancing and then there are lockdowns. Even then, our students are able to connect to the teachers, through social media, through smartphones, right? So telephone calls. 3, we have Telangana perhaps is the only state, thanks to our vision of our Honorable IT Minister Sri KTR Garu. Now our EduSat television, after Gujarat, probably Telangana is the only state where, Telangana, but to some extent Andhra Pradesh, but Telangana is the only state where this television, we call it as SoftNet television, TSAT, this can be seen in every household through cable networks. So that is another important revolution in this times. So our teachers are able to send all the assignments, all the lessons through WhatsApp, and they are able to teach. They are able to go to they are able to go to the television studio and then teach the lessons in a modular fashion. We are perhaps the only system where we have almost 40 freedom schools, and then this year we are increasing the number of freedom schools to 60, wherein students, 10% of the students in a class teach, remaining 90%, and the teachers will be monitoring the entire transaction very closely. If they go astray, then teachers jump in and then do this. So everything is in a modular fashion. So having done these many experiments, we are not finding it very difficult in COVID times. That is what I am trying to. So why I told in these many words about the background, because understanding the background is very important. Our children are not finding it very difficult. So only there are certain challenges. Probably I will describe the challenges a little later. Yeah.
It is, I think it is basically the foundation that is bringing the dividends. Well thought.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a very strong foundation, very serious paid work. We never prepared for, I'm not saying that we prepared for a pandemic like this. No, the pandemic took everybody by storm, and then, even the most advanced countries had little time to prepare for a pandemic. So I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say, we were conscious about reducing the dependence of the middle schoolers and high schoolers on the teachers and making them teach themselves under the guidance of a teacher. So in other words, we assess the performance of the teacher on the basis of her capacity to empower the students to teach themselves. So we have students now teaching in live television. You can see all the videos in YouTube. So live television who earn 1,000 rupees per hour, 1,500 rupees per hour. Degree college students have about 2,000 rupees per hour, and then they compete with their teachers in teaching the best, in using all the pedagogical techniques, and then that teaching learning material. And then this is an experiment. I think this experiment has paid very rich dividends in this crisis time. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful, sir. A lot of innovations and
Absolutely.
well thought foundation that was laid. But still, a lot of. Can you tell us the challenges that you're facing to disseminate the education in these times of crisis? What do you think that where the government needs to be intervene?
Yeah, there are challenges as well. Not everything is rosy, Sudhir, in this time. One is poverty itself is challenge. Then we have only 65% of students and their parents, when I say students, their families having access to smartphones. So only those people have been able to access the social media in a very religious way. And then we also have been using some good online learning platforms like Vox, and then all other platforms. So these people have been able to download all these apps, and including WhatsApp and then YouTube. But still you have 35% of the students who do not have smartphones. Even if they have, we have a Geo telephone, for example, you have a push button phone and you have access to WhatsApp. But you cannot spend too much of time on these things, again and again. So that is another challenge. So 35% of the population do not have smartphones or tablets. And 10% of the population, they don't have any connectivity. Unfortunately, many of them stay in forest areas, and some of them are nomads. Some of them are, migrant laborers. So they have no home. Unfortunately, they're staying with grandparents, and then TV is a luxury. Connectivity is a luxury in those inaccessible areas. And then at least 5 to 10% of the parents have no television at all. So I would say 35% of the people have connectivity issues, whether it is television connectivity or the so-called broadband or 3G or 4G connectivity or smartphone connectivity. So that is another challenge we have. Then another challenge is earlier we used to have institutional training, but thanks to our joint secretaries and then the training wings of both the societies, they have come up with a very innovative solution wherein we can train the people like in the platforms like Zoom or WhatsApp or YouTube or TSAT. So we are able to conduct a trainings, a capacity building programs for the teachers, but they have it has its own limitations. Then fourth thing is, as usual, all the gadgets have, the distraction factors also. Like while you focus on, a YouTube lesson, then you have a comment section. So you have a lot of people making friendships and we're loading lewd comments and sometimes, irrelevant comments. And then people continuously get distracted with the other notifications and then the apps, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then smartphone being smartphone, and then it is only one in the family. Parents also need to do a lot of things in the smartphone. So parents sometimes take away the smartphones, and then children are left with no smartphone, and then we have no other means to reach out to the people. So these are some of the major. And another important challenge, of course, is Sudhir, is data. So the more and more you use smartphones, so you lose a lot of data. So your data plan coming to an end, and then you need to recharge. So you have no money to recharge, and then need to recharge, data plans also is a major challenge. And poor people again. So in these COVID times, where getting food itself is a big challenge, and then data becomes a luxury. So where this is also a place where the governments need to think about. And then another important challenge, Sudhir, most of the direct-to-home television channels are not taking this EduSat, C-band, channels, government-run television channels, which are being primarily used for education. So if direct-to-home television channels, probably Government of India can take a decision on including direct-to-home, including the government-run, state government-run EduSat channels into direct-to-home channel, our reach becomes much more deeper and then wider, and then it would be doing a human service to the students of the poorest of the poor sections. So it's something. And then some parents are also demanding tablets for their children with the right intention, not to misuse them. So these are some of the challenges we have as on today.
Of course, this is a wonderful idea where the edu channels can be accommodated in DTH.
At least as a corporate, Sudhir, as a corporate social responsibility, the Tata Sky or Dishnet or Jio, if at all they have any Sky channels. So all these direct-to-home television channels, as a corporate social responsibility, they can allow they can allow EduSat channels of the government which are being used for educational purpose, and also they can come with a radically competitive data plans. Maybe they can give free data for another 3-4 months. What's wrong? You are saving a generation who will become your workforce of this country for next 20-30 years.
That's wonderful, sir. Anything on this line you have approached? Any plans with the state government and any one with the central government regarding this? It's a wonderful idea.
I think it's a policy matter. I think our state governments have been taking up with the government of India. I think at policy level, I think a decision is being taken in this regard. So I think it's too early for me to comment upon these policy decisions. But I think governments, if not today, tomorrow, I think in Gujarat, if I'm not wrong, some of the EduSat channels are being beamed through direct-to-home satellite networks as well. So I think it's only a matter of time wherein governments will take the decision to include these things. And then I think it's a very rapidly evolving situation, Sudhir. So it hardly gives any time for anyone to look into these things. But I think governments will definitely look into this. That's the hope.
Okay. So what is the way forward you look at it? During the crisis, and there are also possibility that post lockdown there could be a lot of social distancing, and
Yes.
It will not be a open lifting of lockdown.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Chief Ministers of various states have been mentioning about this, and then Honorable Prime Minister has time and again has mentioned, and then most of the countries are also doing the same thing. It's not going to be the same life and then same functioning again. We have to get ready for a new normal situation. COVID has changed our lives probably irreversibly for the next half decade to come. So even if we find a vaccine, we don't know what is going to be the efficacy of vaccine. Even if there is a treatment, we don't know how effective that treatment is going to be. And then till such time, as governments are directly mandating that we need to have social distancing, protecting ourselves with the face mask, and then washing our hands, and all these protocols have to be mandatory, non-negotiable. Whether you are a rural kid, whether you are an urban kid, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a non-teaching staff, or whatever. So these are some of the non-negotiable factors which have to be brought into the schooling system as well. So. Yes. Particularly in residential schools, it is going to be a much more challenging thing.
Yeah.
So we are also thinking on those lines, and then probably masks are going to be compulsory for everyone, and then hand washing counters we need to have, like many government organizations are doing this, and then we are also preparing mentally for that. And then we also have to have we also have to strengthen our clinical health centers, and then we also need to test the temperature of every person who enters the schools. And then we are also trying to work on the sidelines as to how to screen the parents who come to see our students, even with good intentions, and how do we restrict the numbers of the parents. And then we are also thinking radically and then very creatively, how do we make the classes less congested. So with the resources we have at our command is something which we are thinking. And then besides this, during this vacation time, when this lockdown gets extended, or when it is eased in phases, when till the schools reopen, how do we reach out to the students, how do we prepare them with all the content we have. So we need to think about that as well. So we are also thinking on those things. And then we are downloading all the textbooks available online through various apps, etc., etc. We are also preparing worksheets, and we are training a lot of principals and the teachers online mode to get ready for the next academic year. So there are a lot of, and then similarly, we need to be extra cautious about the health of the people who are above 60. So this virus has been very merciless on those people above 60. So, and above 60, and the people with pre-morbid conditions. So we have to take care of those, employees as well. So there are a lot of challenges, but we are slowly working out the strategies as to reach out.
Yes.
But it's not going to be the same again.
Yeah, it's like completely different now. You'll have to, yeah. So
we are also working on digitizing a lot of content, and we're taking the help of a lot of for-profit and not-for-profit entities to make our content more relevant, and to make our content more interesting, and then to make our content more palatable for the students and the parents. And we are also training the parents now. Now the parents' cooperation is extremely important in this lockdown time. It's not that I have placed my child in your hands and I'm paying fee. Okay, now it is your responsibility to make him as an IITian or the most successful person under the sun. No, as a parent, you have to be ever more serious in schooling the children. I don't call it as a homeschooling, but I would call it as a co-schooling. So you also have to don the role of a teacher, even if you don't know how to read and write. I repeat, even if you don't know how to read and write, you have to pitch in. You have to ensure that child focuses on what he or she has to study. You can't say that, sir, I don't know how to read and write, so please, it is your responsibility. At least majority of the parents do know how to read, and they know how to read and write. And those people, they cannot wash up their hands and then place every burden on the teacher. Those days are gone. So the parents also have to pitch in. So now we have started training parents as to how to be responsible teachers in their homes. So every parent is a teacher,
yes,
a tag of teacher. So this is something which
that's wonderful. Connecting teachers, you're training parents also.
Yes, absolutely. We have a school for future parenting. We have trained the first batch. We have got solid results. Now we are going to start the second batch as well. We call parents also as senior students.
So change is not just at the student and teachers, but also at the family members back home.
Absolutely. Even community level also, we are planning to reach out to the sarpanchas with the permission of our government to have mass televisions in their community centers. So if a community contributes, why should we depend only on government? Every time we depend only on government. If community can utilize resources and have a larger television or a PowerPoint, like kind of LCD projector, and then a white wall, and then have a connection, so you can always beam all the lessons that we are teaching to the entire community. So the problem of not having a television in a home can be solved if Gram Ka Mukhia, Sarpanch or President, if he or she can pitch in, gather the resources and then have a community television. I think we can go back to the olden days.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
So those
I think this idea will be taken through this webinar. Sir, in this, I've seen, first of all, I should congratulate. Now, Swayarose are in the Spinger's Publishers, one of the global publishing companies in USA. And I should also congratulate for the case study that has been taken up by a international university.
Yes.
Can you please tell us about these two?
Yeah, I at the very outset, I thank all my teachers and the academic administrators in both the societies, and I thank also the government for being solidly behind us. So, what happened in this case study was the Harvard University, particularly the Graduate School of Education, has been studying the teachers' capacity building programs, and the impact of that capacity building on the students and the communities and the learning communities in different countries. So they have selected USA, they selected the UK, then they selected Mexico, then Cambodia in Eastern Asia, then they have selected one more country, Mexico. Other than Mexico, they have selected one more country. Then they selected India. In India, Telangana, they selected. So they were really impressed with the way we have been, doing teacher capacity building programs. We have been using a multi-pronged strategy. So while directly impacting the teacher, so indirectly impacting the teacher. So by doing various programs and then making teachers party to those programs, so it's kind of teacher is day in and day out is drenched in the pool of experimentation, so without losing the core. So the teachers, without their knowledge, they have picked up so much of jargon and so much of lingo, so much of the ability to experiment. So it's a very indirect way of capacity building. So they got really impressed, and then they studied all the 6 systems. It's not a comparative study, Sudhir. So it is only a they selected the 6 systems in their in the silos and their own ecosystems. So in their in a very unique way. So today at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, they are releasing the book electronically in I think in Bay Area in California.
Wonderful one. I've been receiving many calls. They were talking about the book release. I didn't know about it. Now, since you mentioned, I could connect with it. Many were asking about it, the book being published.
Yeah, I think it will be a very good resource on capacity building of teachers. How 6 nations, when Harvard University picks up those case studies, I think it will be for a reason. So I think they will be very different, and then I think there is every reason why we should go through the book, and it is available open source. They're not pricing anything, so you can download it online. So it's an open source book. So absolutely,
it's wonderful. So it's a moment of pride for entire country and also for the states.
Absolutely.
And it's like a round of applause is deserving to the teachers and a person like you is heading such institution.
Absolutely. I not only thank my teachers, but I also thank the associates with whom we have been working. We have a very strong campaign called Summer Samurai. So in summer months, we engage about 100,000, that is 1 lakh students in summer camps. What we do in summer camps is we call all the associates, not for profit sector, then for profit people, so who have been doing a lot of experiments in their own smaller ecosystems. We call them and then we ask them to engage our students and their teachers in the Summer Samurai camp. And then we must then thank them also for they have been TFI fellows, Teach for India fellows. There have been a lot of not for profit and then for profit agencies who have been working with us for the last 7 to 8 years, and then even credit must equally go to them as well, besides our teachers. Yes.
Of course. So your institution with more than 2 lakh children,
Yes.
with studying being imparted from the school education to higher education.
Yes.
We can see many of your students, Swayaros, coming out with successful, getting into successful professions and also other national and international institutions.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the collaborations you have and also your students who have reached to this level?
It's a very good question, and thanks for asking that. This is a culmination of all our efforts, because if we can't place the students in the higher education and the best of the universities in this country and the world, I think all efforts will go waste. And then we bring to the students what to one level, and then after that we suddenly drop them, and then they are left high and dry. So we didn't want this to happen. So we partner with a lot of well-intentioned agencies, Sudhir. So we partnered, I don't have the names, but we partner with agencies which help our students prepare for job market. Then whether it is software sector or other sector, we partner with the agencies which prepare our students to be the teachers in primary education and then early childhood education sector, right? Then we partner with the agencies which prepare our students to write essays, and then the college application itself is a big hassle. So we partner with so many such agencies which prepare our students to enter into the best universities again. Then we also partner with the agencies which empower the parents, which bring awareness among the parents about the value of higher education. One of the reasons, one of our discoveries is why parents are not interested to send their girls and then to higher education, marry them off at a very young age in rural areas and then semi-urban areas, is the fact that they have no idea about higher education. Many of them have apprehensions about the financial aid, scholarship policies, and boys and girls going together to college. All that, all those apprehensions our parents have. So we partner with some agencies which bring in that kind of awareness among the poorest of the poor parents in the rural areas about the opportunities available. So we partner with the agencies which help us to intern with a lot of international bodies. For example, we partner with ISEC. ISEC has been a very popular agency which places students in various internships all across the globe. And then we send a lot of students to global internships. And we partner with an agency which places our students in non-profit organizations in all in the entire country. That's Chejuba. So like that, we have a lot of agencies helping us in preparing our students for higher education. As a result of which, today we have students. We also partner with a lot of agencies which train our students to enter into Indian Institute of Management, Indian Institute of Technology, then many other premier institutions. As a result, every year we send about 70 to 80 students to top-notch medical colleges. And then around the last year, around 540 students qualified for JEE mains in our society. Then we have about 220 students studying in the top-notch colleges in Delhi University. Then we have about 100 students in Ajim Premji University. We have about 70 to 80 students in Indian Maritime University. Let me tell you, 50% of all these students joined in these institutions in open competition. I repeat, in open competition. That is a beauty with which these students are working very hard. And then I thank all the agencies who have been working with us. And then in every college, Sudhir, we have a higher education cell. So one lecturer, senior lecturer, is designated as higher education cell coordinator. And in our head office also, we have Department of Alumni Relations, which looks into all these aspects of connecting their students to the best universities. We have students in Ashoka University. We have students in Ambedkar University, Delhi. And then we have students in Kriya University in Chennai. So like that, all best possible universities. And then we have some students doing international exchange programs. There are some of them in America, some of them in other countries as well. Yeah.
So the students are paying back those.
Yes, that is the spirit of Sveroism. So I shall repay what I borrow. So if you have borrowed air, you have borrowed water, you have borrowed education, you have borrowed knowledge from your country, then you must repay back to your country. You cannot be self-serving individual. Then you cease to be a citizen of this country if you don't repay, in a moral sense I'm talking about, not in a legal sense, moral sense. So Sveros network, the very pillar and foundation of Svero network is repay. Pay back to the community, pay back whatever you have taken with interest if possible, but never remain as a self-serving individual. Then that is a treachery of the highest order to the country. So we cannot indulge in this kind of act. We must repay what we borrowed from the nation. Yeah, that is the spirit of Spheros Network.
Wonderful. So now we can see, if you can see, there is a button, Q&A button,
Yes.
and also a chat button. We can see a lot of questions pouring in. We can just go through it, and if we can slowly see this. Great.
I think you can pick up those questions, and then maybe one or two we can answer, because everybody will be busy. So yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
I'm looking at Q&A. Yeah.
There are some suggestions here. The task will definitely improve the knowledge. By Mr.
About idea of business, we have a business school now.
Yeah.
We have a Sainik school. Then we have India's first ever Armed Forces Residential Degree College for Women. So Major Usha Sharma is leading that, and then we have Colonel Ravindra Reddy and then Colonel Y.S. Rao leading Sainik schools. And then we have probably we have one fine art school, and with film technology. So with film technology as integral division. So we have a lot of specialization, and this year we are bringing the business knowledge to school level also. So, and then
lot of them are can be seen giving the compliment. You're doing a good movement. It's only limited to Telangana state, or will it extend to other states also? It's by Mr. Venkat Ramana. Of course, this is one good question. The success system and model in Telangana residential institutions like social and tribal, what it takes to be replicated in other states?
Of course, you require a tremendous amount of political will, for which in Telangana we have no shortage of political will. That is the reason why we have exponentially expanded the KG to PG mission, starting with residential education. So it requires, like, we have similar, such kind of a strong political will is required to have this kind of thing. And then we also need to have a lot of awareness about the residential education and education, like Delhi also there are a lot of experiments are going on. Karnataka also residential education is expanding very rapidly. So in Gujarat, for example, Ekalavya model residential schools are expanding very rapidly, and Government of India has come up with Ekalavya model residential schools in huge numbers. In fact, like 722, 760, and now that itself is a big society now. So all it calls for a very strong political will. More, I think nothing can beat a strong political will. And then communities, and then the advocacy groups should be able to reach out to the politicians of the day, and then see that this becomes a policy, and then which can radically change the generation. Why I'm advocating residential education in a very strong way, particularly for poorest of the poor people. The tragedy in our country is the poorest of the poor parents have no time or no awareness about as to how to oversee the learning process of the child. So informally they can help, informally they can motivate, but they cannot go into nitty-gritties. This is where the residential education comes into picture, wherein teacher plays the role of not only a teacher but also as a parent. So that is a huge turnaround and a huge quantum leap in terms of thinking, and placing the poorest of the poor in the most prosperous orbit. And the failure rate in residential education is very minimal. See, even in the job market also, for example, our 10th class board examinations, the state average would be around 85 to 88 or 90, and then the residential education average will be around 97 to 99. And in the board 12th grade examinations, the state average would be around 67 to 70, and the residential education institutions average will be around 87 to 89, sometimes 90. And in higher education, degree colleges, the pass percentage will be around 35%.
and our degree colleges average is around 87 to 90, I would say 80, 85 to 89. See the difference, 40 to 50% difference in the degree colleges. So, and the job market also, the students who pass out from residential education, they are more competitive. Then
the people who pass out from day schools, and I'm not saying day school is bad. What we can do is we can have a hybrid system wherein the day schools and the residential education seamlessly, continuously, they stay in touch with each other so that they can learn from each other. So is the case with private sector. Why should we leave private sector? Private sector kids are also our own kids. So if there is a constant interaction between residential education, then day school government education and private sector, so I think we can bring out a very good generation in this country and who can lead from the front. Yeah, is something which I see as every state can replicate this model. Absolutely, I think so far about 13 to 14 states have visited our residential education.
Okay, great, great.
Including Government of India.
Okay. Great. So I see that a lot of questions are there which are like which you have already answered, be it regarding Nat Geo. It is by Mr. Linga Swami Prardhana. You already answered that, and there is also one Mr. Dhiren Rana. Do you think we are heading towards a self-paced learning at school level slowly, like Western countries? School may not exist.
I think we can never replace teachers. No. I think parenting cannot be done online, and then teaching is nothing but parenting of a different kind. So teachers can never be replaced. However, the role of not because I am son of two teacher parents, but otherwise also teachers can never be replaced. Even the best of the technology cannot replace the teachers, because it's a different ball game. But as Dhiren rightly pointed out, slowly the role of a school, I think, will become different. School becomes an experimental ground. School becomes only a socializing place where we socialize and we exchange ideas. But how do these ideas from school becomes a place where the debates are orchestrated, the conversations are orchestrated. School becomes a place, school might and should become a place where new things are found, new things are discovered, new ideas are debated, new ideas are cherished. And the homes, probably in future, homes will become the place where the basics are learned. Homes become the place where the foundations are laid slowly. And then teachers will become researchers slowly, and teachers will bring in a lot of cutting edge knowledge into the onto the table, wherein a lot of conversation around those points which teachers have brought in onto the table will take place. So the very nature of schooling will change, I think, in future, and then COVID has accelerated that process. So I agree probably with Dhiren, but all this will require a teacher.
Yes.
So I'm not saying all this will happen independent of teacher. I think things will go astray. We still require a teacher, but in a different role, altogether a different role. That old lecture mode probably will not be that effective in future. I think you need to have a different role. You need to devise a different role, and then you need to be a different avatar. A teacher 2.0, teacher 3.0 is required. Yeah.
So it's, of course, the corona pandemic has triggered the change, which is
yes, it has accelerated that process. So it is for us to decide upon the direction in which we should go. It is for us to decide upon the destiny, which destination we need to go. That's where I think Dhiren's question is coming.
Yeah. There is one question from Mr. Pawan K. Madasu.
Yeah.
He's talking that regarding introducing IIT, NET coaching in residential society is one of the most challenging tasks. What measures have been taken to ensure the teaching standards and regular evaluation?
It's an ongoing process. Rome is not built in a day, Pawanji. So we are working, and then our teachers. If I compare our teachers' preparedness for teaching at IIT level or NEET level, I think it was not that encouraging. But today, most of our teachers are absolutely comfortable, and then comfortable with preparing our students for IIT or national eligibility entrance examination, NEET. So I think it will happen, and then we are going more that is we are going more to foundation. That is where our freedom schooling and the centers of excellence are playing a huge role. So wherein we are going into a very foundational level. We are going towards foundation level, where every subject is being treated in its entirety, 360 degrees, and not with view to crack examination. No. If you see our TSAT lectures also, we are not willing to prepare our students to crack the competitive examinations. We are preparing our students to enjoy the knowledge, cherish the knowledge, encourage questioning, question as much as you can, be a critical thinker, use your common sense, question all the existing assumptions. So, and be courageous to question, even if somebody is a principal also, question if you find something different. So we are preparing a new generation. I think it will happen over a period of time, and then our teachers are slowly getting used to this kind of thing, and I'm very happy about it. Yeah.
Great, so great. And there is one question, I think you partly answered this, by Mr. Devanuri Sampath.
Yeah.
He's talking about about those students to get masks, sanitizers, their home, and how is government helping them? How is government making them aware for the students to be safe?
Absolutely. So government will, I think it is a responsibility. Government is a custodian of the lives of our students. And then when we admit the students, we take entire responsibility for everything, not necessarily academics. So we do provide masks, and when children enter the institutions, we do provide masks, and we do provide hand sanitizers at our own cost, because we know which kind of background they come from. So absolutely not a problem. And when we are able to spend so much on the health of the students and so much for the nutrition of the students, can't the government, we will definitely, it is part of our job. It's part of our, policy that we should be the custodians of the lives of the students. So absolutely, there should not be any doubt on that.
Yeah. There is one question from Mr. Asif Mohammed. Do you think that educating some of them and raising their incomes economically can bring the entire community, in the sense, bringing up the community upwards? Isn't it just, yeah. He's talking about Mr. Asif, the income of.
No, but somewhere it has to start. Community is not a solid entity. You have to have, community is a group of individuals, and when you target an individual, when you bring him up, so naturally he or she is expected to be a role model for the rest 99, and then slowly that's called as contagion effect. Slowly they also fall in line, and then I can tell you one example. Just because there is one one Swero in a village, all other parents got so encouraged. So this guy is doing very well, and then this guy joined a very good job. So let us admit all our students in those schools where this guy is studying. So that is a contagion effect. So that's how a lot of people. So, and similarly, that guy comes back and then tells his story, and then pays to the scholarship of gives a scholarship or gives some financial aid to those people who are struggling with poverty. So I think that is how the communities develop all over the world. So, but individual is very critical in community development. If individuals do not develop, if individuals cannot break the shackles of poverty, then community becomes a non-entity. It's not very. I don't believe that everybody can be impacted at one go and horizontally. It's not possible. So you have to. Some individuals who are enterprising, some individuals who are hardworking, they will come up faster. So all others who are not so enterprising, who are not so faster in their approach, slowly they learn from this individual, and then that's called as a domino effect or contagion effect, and then slowly community will rise on its own. Sometimes faster, sometimes with a little slower pace, but they will develop.
There is one question from by Mr. Arpit Gupta. He's from Uttar Pradesh.
Yeah.
And he's a question: how is Telangana social and tribal welfare helping the state to fight against COVID-19?
One is by following government orders strictly, and taking care of all the students, even if they are not in our schools, and taking care of the health of the not only students, even their parents. And if somebody is facing problem with food and accommodation, bringing it to the notice of district administration. And somebody is not feeling well and then showing the symptoms, immediately alerting the district administration, so that district administration rises to the occasion and then takes care of the case. So, and we are organically connected with the district administration, and some of our schools have become quarantine centers. Almost 20 to 25 schools have become quarantine centers. We have volunteered to give those schools to quarantine centers because of extraordinary crisis. So, and wherever collectors have asked for, providing catering workers to the quarantine centers, we have provided catering workers to quarantine centers. So, a lot of things we are doing to the to help the government.
Okay.
Part of the government, and then whatever government says, we do.
There is one more following question. I think the same answers this by Mr. Souvik Goswami from New Delhi.
Yes.
How are you ensuring that no community transmission take place in tribal areas of Telangana?
By following all the, I think very strong protocols are in place by the government. If you see the,
Yes.
number of cases getting reported from Telangana, is one of the most shining examples in the entire country. So lockdown, and then reaching out to the most needy through government networks, and then ensure that they get food, and they get, our government has given 1,500 rupees per head, whoever is, ration card holder. So, and giving them the food, and giving them all possible medical assistance, and see that there is no death because of starvation, there is no death because of other forms of ill health, and then following the guidelines very, very strictly. And I should thank all our police department, health, emergency workers, and then district administration, and then health administration.
Yes.
Doing a phenomenal job. Yeah.
Wonderful work. There is one question by Mr. I think Nikhil Jackson. I have a request. Any chances to our Swaros again for one film from our team?
Why not?
We are ready for the
There is
task.
already a movie on Swaros, Purna. It is available in Amazon Prime. During COVID time, I encourage all the viewers to watch the movie. It fills you with a lot of hope and spirit. So, and then a lot of Swaros are acting in a lot of movies. So, yes. If you want to make a movie on Swaros, you're welcome. We'll provide all the background information.
Wonderful, sir. There is one question from Chandigarh, Priya Yadav. She's asking, sir, your story is very inspiring and brings hope in these grim times. What advice would you give to someone who is devoid of all opportunities?
A very interesting question, very difficult question indeed. I don't think opportunities are totally denied. So I think that is a wretched human state if all opportunities are denied to a person. But somewhere there will be hope. So ask someone who is in the nearest locality, or tap someone online, or reach out to the district administration, or ask the people whom you know to connect you to people who are reasonably successful or who are leading a normal life. So somewhere there will be some hope, Priyaji. There won't be anyone who will be devoid totally of opportunities. I think that is a wretched state. I think if somebody is devoid of all opportunities, somewhere you have to make an effort to find at least to find one person who thinks like you, or who thinks for you, thinks like a human being at least.
Yeah.
Very difficult question.
Yes. One question from Mr. Krishna Samalla. He's appreciating all the work, and can we think about voluntary society or something? This not even understand.
What he says is there are still many more people who need to be reached out And then can we think about such vulnerable people? Yes, we must think. That is, see, that's what I said. It is not the responsibility of only government, Krishnaji. We also have to work harder. So, if we leave only, if we expect only government should do, I think we are not doing our job as citizens. I think we all have to form, like during COVID time, you see, hundreds and thousands of civilian organizations, not-for-profit organizations, for-profit organizations, they're coming onto street and providing food. Same is the case with education also. As enlightened citizens, we should also go to the poorest of the poor communities and then make them aware about all the opportunities. So, and then they will come up. They will come up. Absolutely, absolutely. So, but we also have to do our job. Let us not expect or cry over government. Is something which I wanted to tell. Yes, that is a spirit of heroism also. Yes.
Yeah. There's one question from Maharashtra, Mumbai, by Mr. Harshal Desai. Is asking, while the government is working to help tribal communities by supplying rice, vegetables, and other essentials, there is some lack of transportation in Appaya, Pali, and Mannor. How government is working on transportation and easy access to such remote areas?
We are not aware of this problem. I will definitely bring it to the notice of concerned district collector and then project officer, integrated tribal development agency. Immediately we will get it done.
Yeah. There is one question from Rupali Gupta. I don't have a question though. I just wish to appreciate your thinking on how we make the poor people think about themselves. This needs to be changed. This is something.
I do. Yes. Yes, good.
One question from Rajasthan, Jaipur by Mr. Karthik Sharma. How will you promote digital education in tribal populations?
No, there are schools, and then we must invest on digital technologies in the school. And then, for example, in all our schools we have computer laboratories, social welfare and tribal welfare schools. We have computer laboratories, and then I said, as I have already told, we need to install satellite television, EduSat channels, and then we need to have dish connections. We need to have cable connections to those homes, and at least state governments can always work on these lines and then ensure that at least at community level we can always do this. Yes, I think it's very easy. It's not very difficult.
There are so many questions, sir. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I think I can always please give my mail ID, Sudhir, so they can always contact me. No problem.
Yeah. So
and always take a printout of these questions and then kindly send them to me. I will always answer them.
Certainly, sir.
And then you can give email ID also, so they can always contact me. So
there are more than like a lot of.
Yeah, there are about 58, 60 questions, and then I will not be able to answer all the questions because I need to go for another.
So I can see a lot of compliments and in the chat box also, and many questions are coming in. We are also Facebook Live through our all the Facebook handles of Digital Learning Magazine, Ego Magazine, and also on. We would also be post this webinar. We would be posting the entire recorded interview, the webinar interview, in this social platforms. Sir, we have worked over the years. I've known you. We have worked also together, and you have been part of our knowledge conferences related to education also. So would you like to tell, and we have embarked on this rigorous campaign in the time of corona crisis. Would you like to you have some comments and some feedback about the team ELETS?
ELETS has been a very good friend of our organization, and then it has really conducted a lot of path-breaking conferences where they brought the best brains both from government and then non-government sector, particularly the for-profit and not-for-profit entities, and then they brought the best brain. Not only brought the best brains, but they also brought the best practices onto the table so that everyone can learn from everyone. So there can be a lot of horizontal learning take place in such conferences. Then I met some of the finest people in education sector through in the ELETS conferences. Particularly in Delhi conference, I met a lot of bureaucrats who have been doing great things in their districts and in the states across the country. So I only wish that you conduct, you bring a lot of people who are more committed, and then with eyes and ears on the ground, and then with have solid measurable goals, and then with deeper commitment to the cause of education, particularly for the most vulnerable people. So if you can bring all such people onto a table, around the table, and then you can trigger the conversation around what should happen post COVID, and then not only COVID, but even 2030 or 2045. How do we prepare the generations of people for future years? Is something which I would wish ELETS, not only sharing the best practices, but strategizing for future is something which I would request you. And then you have been doing great jobs, a great job so far. So I don't
Thank you.
have,
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouragement.
thank you very much, Sudhir, and thank you, everybody. I really, I'm sorry that I have not been able to answer all the questions, but I would really appreciate if you type the same question, or if you can give the suggestions to me. My email ID is very simple: praveenIPS@gmail.com, praveenIPS@gmail.com. I request Sudhir to give my email ID to everyone. So, thank you very, very much. I wish you a safe stay in your homes, and then please take care, and then please wear mask whenever you go out, and then please wash your hands frequently. Thank you very much once again. I wish you all the best in your careers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I would request all the audience and all the participants very much. I thank everyone, and we would request these the ideas, the innovations that's happening in Telangana tribal and social welfare can go needs to reach to maximum. So I would request all the participants to please share this live Facebook interview from the which has been made live from our Facebook page. You can share it as much as possible. And thank you so much, sir.